France, India and Saudi Arabia are among about 30 countries lining up to impose bans on travellers from the UK as Britain battles a mutated strain of coronavirus that is said to be much more contagious. UK ports and airports have been thrown into chaos, leaving the country effectively cut off from continental Europe.
Entry denied. Trucks headed from England to the European mainland forced to turn back after alarms were raised over the new coronavirus strain. The channel crossing to France is a crucial trade route. Truck drivers and their goods now stranded.
I am to go Spanish, but closing today.
This is kitchen, my kitchen.
This is what you have to live off for the next 2 days?
Yeah, I will make here eating or anything, or coffee, tea, like this.
Travel at London's Heathrow Airport was also disrupted, with some passengers left in limbo.
I'm confused at this time. Basically, when I arrived here on 14 December, situation is totally different. It's hard time here.
It's really putting a constraint on a lot of people, but I think overall we're all just waiting on the opening up of all of the countries, you know, in that sense, to see our family and get back together.
The new COVID strain has already been detected in mainland Europe and as far away as Australia. Experts say the newly developed vaccines should still protect against the mutation.
Well, let's take a closer look at this mutation with John Campbell. He's an independent health analyst and educator and joins us from Carlisle in the north of England. Welcome to DW. It's in the nature of viruses to mutate. So why has this mutation got authorities so exercised?
Well, they noticed that this mutation, or this variant form of the virus, was more prevalent in areas where there is an increase in incidence of the virus generally. So in London and the southeast, for example, there was an escalation of cases, and they found out that this virus was correlated with that escalation in cases. And then this went to Porton Down, and in Porton Down, the Biological Virological Institute in the UK, they did some lab-based tests where they culture up the virus and they have human cell cultures, quite sophisticated experiments. And the conclusion from their work was that this virus is more, this variant of the virus is more transmissible. So we seem to have a virus which is more transmissible than the previous forms of this virus. It's still the SARS coronavirus 2, of course, it's just a new variant. But about 70%, we think, 70% more contagious. And that increases the transmissibility by about 0.4 or to 0.8, something like that. So it's quite a significant increase in the degree to which the virus can be transmitted around. And what that means is that if the virus has a particular biological tendency to be transmitted, we have to be even more rigorous with our precautions, with our hands, face, space, ventilation measures, because the virus is that bit easier to catch. So I think that's why people are worried about it. There is evidence that it's more transmissible.
So, more contagious, does that necessarily mean it's more deadly?
It certainly doesn't mean that. The particular mutation on this virus is called the N501Y. Now, that is the 501st amino acid on this spike protein. And that affects what's called the receptor binding domain, where it actually fits into the receptor cell to cause the infection. So we know it's a specific part of the virus which is specifically adapted to fitting into the receptor cell. It doesn't seem to be affecting anything else in the virus itself. So it's an increase in transmissibility. And as well as that, when we look at the epidemiology, yes, there's more people admitted to hospital in the area where this mutation is, but that's because there's greater numbers of the virus altogether. So the virus does not seem to have a greater pathogenicity in this variant. It seems to cause disease as the same as the other virus, but it spreads and more people get sick all at the same time is the problem.
And we've only just started to vaccinate people. I know that vaccinations have begun in the UK already. Are we happy that these vaccines will still work against this mutant strain?
It's a remarkably good question. Now, the vaccines work in different ways, especially a vaccine like the Oxford vaccine, which we're looking at the moment. It's probably going to be accredited soon. And we have research. The reason I'm quoting the Oxford vaccine is we have peer-reviewed publications on that, whereas the Pfizer and the Moderna were more going by press releases. But we know that the Oxford vaccine will stimulate these neutralizing antibodies. Now, they may be partly effective because the neutralizing antibodies stick onto the spike protein. So it's possible they'll be partly affected. But the vaccine also generates agglutinating antibodies that clump a lot of the viruses together. And the vaccine also stimulates cellular immunity, which is probably even more important than antibody immunity. So it stimulates a group of cells called natural killer cells, which will kill virally infected cells. It stimulates a group of cells called T cytotoxic cells, which again kill virally infected cells. And it also stimulates cells that eat the virus called phagocytic cells, such as macrophages and neutrophils. So it's attacking the virus in many different ways. So it might have a minimal effect on one aspect of immunity, but the vaccine is still going to work overall because the vaccine is boosting immunity in so many different ways.
So now we have a situation where countries all over the world are banning flights from the UK. Is that likely to be effective? I mean, is it already out there?
This virus was definitely identified on the 20th of September. Now, alarm bells weren't particularly rang at that time because this N501 mutation was just one of actually 12,000 mutations that this virus has been documented to have had since it left Wuhan way back in January and the start of the year. So it wasn't particularly worrisome that there was this new mutation. But sorry, what was the question, Phil?
The question was about countries banning flights from the UK. Is that likely to be effective?
Yeah. So because it's already been around from the 20th of September, it had the end of September, all of October, all of November and into December to spread around the world. So we know it's spread around all parts of the UK. We know it's all over Wales, for example. The prevalence isn't that high yet, but it's also in Scotland, and we know for sure it's spread to Denmark, the Netherlands and Australia. And it may well have spread to other countries. Now, I strongly suspect the Robert Koch Institute and the Centers for Disease Control in the United States are frantically doing genomic analysis as we speak to see if the variant is already there. I suspect it's certainly a real risk that it could be.
All right. Good talking to you, as ever. Thank you so much. That's very clear. John Campbell, independent health analyst.
Thank you.
Well, the